Thank you everybody for joining. My name is Byron Tardif, and I'm going to be talking about 6 ways to get started with .NET 6 on App Service. I don't know what I'm going to do next year when we do .NET 7, but I'll figure it out. So the first thing I want to announce is we have full stack, full support across Windows, Linux, on both App Service, Azure Functions, and static web apps. So that means on day 0, you can grab your .NET 6 apps and host them on any of the past platforms that we have on Azure. That is including full application insight support, so you can also monitor your apps as you're getting traffic to them. There's not a lot to talk, so let's just dive right into the demos. And I'm going to try to do 6 demos in half an hour. Let's see how it goes. I'm going to start out over here in the terminal, and what I have is 6 different folders, 6 different demos. So let's see if all of that works as expected. So let's go into the first one, and I have a handy cheat sheet. There we go, and this is what I'm going to be doing. First, the first way to get started, which is the fastest and the easiest, is to do .NET new web app and then immediately push that over to the to the cloud. So let's see, I have sample. This is an empty directory, .NET new web app. And it's going to go create the template. So now I have some files. I can see that this is targeting .NET 6. Let's go look at the CS proj. And right here, you can see this is targeting .NET 6. So if I go back up to my cheat sheet, I'm going to run this command. And what that's going to do is it's going to go hook up to Azure. It's going to create a new app in a new resource group in a new app service plan. In this case, we're targeting Windows. You can see right here, this is a Windows app service plan. And then I'm passing some other configuration just because I'm a little bit of an OCD freak. But you could just run this with AC Web App up, and it would do the right thing for you. So I'm pushing this over to West US. I'm targeting .NET 6, and I'm putting it in a production P1 V2 SKU. And then this last little parameter right over here is something that I like to do. That what it will do is it will just pop open a browser window as soon as the deployment is done and my app is ready to go. We can see some of the output here. Different things are happening. I'm creating the web app. I'm creating the app service plan. I'm getting all of the configuration in place. And right now what's going on is it's doing a deployment. So this is going to zip the file and push it up to Azure, and it should be ready to go in a couple seconds. In the meantime, I'm going to go over to the portal. This is the resource group that I was using, and I'm going to look for my demo app. So right here, demo 001. At some point, the browser, oh, there we go. So this is now loading my app. This is an empty template app, but I do want to show over here, if I jump over to the console, we can see that if I do a .NET info, it's going to show me that I have the .NET 6 runtime as well as the .NET 6 SDK. So that means that you can both publish pre-compiled applications as well as go compile them in Kudu and have the app up and running in seconds. We're doing this through a mechanism that is called early access. So what that means is that we push the .NET 6 as soon as they're available. We did that on Monday, and they're staged. So the moment that the worker that is hosting your application detects that it has a .NET 6 app, then it goes, pulls, does the installation, and everything happens in seconds. You saw how it didn't take a lot to get the app started and running. So now, we showed it in the CLI, so now let's move on to the next demo. Whoop. And one more. And now we're going to do it all from VS Code. So let's do. So now here I am, VS Code. I have exactly the same solution, but now I'm going to do the same thing from the editor. This time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to target an existing application that I already have. This is just to save a little bit of time when it comes to doing deployments and all of that stuff. So I'm going to deploy to a web app, and I'm going to target my subscription. Actually, let's go and create a new one. I think I deleted the other one when I was doing the demo. bk.net conf demo 002. Whoop, demo. That's what happens when you do it live. I'm going to put it in the resource group that I was already using, which is .NET Conf. I'm going to target .NET 6. I'm going to run it on Linux. And I want this to be in West US because I'm sitting in Redmond, and that's closest to me. I'm going to use this app service plan that I already have. I'm going to skip App Insights for now. And now this is going to go create the web app, create the app service plan, zip the package, and upload to production. Like I said, on my first demo, we accomplished this through early access mechanism. But now what's happening is we do that on the first day. And now we're turning around and we're doing another upgrade that goes and actually installs the bits on every worker. So that is something that we take a little bit more time because it does touch a bunch of machines. So if you think of app service, we're installing the .NET framework and SDK across millions of machines. So we take about 3 to 4 days to do that. So by the time Wednesday comes around or Thursday, we'll probably be done across the board. So that takes away the early access penalty that adds a little bit of cold start. And by Wednesday, everything should be baked in, and you should see that early access moniker go away from the portal. The other thing to call out is we've been doing early access for .NET ever since Preview 3. And if you have an existing app that is already targeting .NET 6, you would have seen through the summer and into the fall that as new previews of .NET came out, we were pushing the bits usually within a week of them being made available. So if you had a Preview 3 application, it has been updated all the way up to RTM bits. If you have an existing app that is running, we try not to disrupt the runtime. So in some cases, you might need to restart the app to make sure that it picks up the latest, greatest bits, but they should all be there for you, ready to go. So at this point, my deployment should have already been done. Let's go back to .NET Conf. Let's refresh this. Here's demo 002. Let's see the app working. There we go. And then let's take a look. And in this case, I'm going to SSH. I'm going to SSH into the app. And this is something that you can do on Linux instances. And now I'm going to do .NET info. And there we go. RTM bits ready to go. My app's up and running. Nothing fancy. OK, so now let's go to the next demo. Let's close the folder. Make sure I don't get my code confused. OK. OK. Went too far. There we go. So now, same thing. I have the same code that we saw before, but I do have a little bit of a code edit that I want to do. This is a little snippet that I borrowed from my friend Brady. And what we're going to do here is we're going to remove line comment, save this change, git status. I see that I have my one change there. OK, let's do that again. Git commit, live demo, git push. OK, so what's different here is I'm actually pushing code from my IDE into production through GitHub. So if we go to my demo 003 app, what we're going to see is that I have Deployment Center already configured. And this is pointing to an existing repository where I have my code. And what we're going to see here is there's an action that is now executing that is doing the build for my code. So quick thing to point out here is this is another instance where we have the ecosystem running on 100% RTM bits. So this is GitHub Actions running .NET 6 build with RTM bits. The other cool thing that you can do here is that you can actually set this up from the web app create. So if I go into create, you're going to see, let's do .NET Conf. Let's do demo. I'm going to go with .NET 6, Linux, and the rest doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to go to deployment, and I can do enable. So this lets you create from start an application that is already hooked up to GitHub. If I go select, for example, the app that I was already talking about, .NET Conf demo main, we can preview the action that you get. So this is a pre-configured action that does the right thing. This is something that is developed by the team. So you don't need to go figure out what action you need to write to deploy your web app. You can always start with this, and modify it as you go along. The actions are checked in. So if I go over here, I can look at my code, and I can see that there's the workflows and the action that got created for my app with all the right configuration. And by this time, the build is done. I can go back to my demo 003 app, demo 003, and this time I can browse to it, and we can see that I'm getting this programmatically, and it's .NET 6 RTM bits on the box, ready to go. Thank you, Brady, for the snippet of code there. Oh, that reminds me. The other thing I want to show is I mentioned that we also have the application insights support built right in. So, and this is also happening on day 0. So I can go to, let me find the right app. I have a cheat sheet to help me not flounder about these things. Cheat sheet, and then this is the app that I want to go take a look at. This was set up by another PM in my team. Jason, heads up. Thank you for the demo. And what we're going to see here is I have an app that has both an API as well as a front end. It's monitored by application insights, and it has a database that it's talking to. So if I go to the web app, I can browse, and I can see that this is a simple to-do app. Once it loads, give it a second. Come on, you can do it. OK, I'm going to wait for the web app to load, but in the meantime, I'm going to go check out the Application Insights resource. So Application Insights gives you a ton of monitoring telemetry right out of the box without even have to write a code change. This is something that you can just enable when you're deploying the app. And right out of the box, without modifying the code, that's the important thing, is you can get things like, for example, an application map that tells you what the interactions of the different components of your app looks like. So you can see that we have the web UI, we can have the API, and that is talking to a database. And then we can also have live metrics where you can see in real time what's happening with your application. So hopefully by this time, my app is up and running. There we go. So this is live demo test. I'm going to create the task. And then, yes, I'm doing the live demo, so the task is done. And we should see the live metrics coming on here where you can see the request and what's happening with latency, et cetera. Again, without even having to touch your code. OK, let's switch gears now. So now I am going to switch over to Azure Functions. And what I'm going to do here is I have already configured an Azure Function app. And this is already running against .NET 6. So I can go open it right here. Whoop. Mistyped the URL probably. So let's go through the regular flow, .NET Conf. And what I have is an HTTP trigger function. So cool thing to call out here is we have full .NET 6 RTM support for Azure Functions, as well as the new Azure Functions before runtime that is now GA. And we can see my code over here. And what I have is I'm going to uncomment this line. And I'm just basically doing the same thing, calling out the framework to see what's actually running, executed successfully on. And I'm going to do some string interpolation here. And you see that cool IntelliSense helping me out. Let's test and run. And there we go. So we have this Azure function triggered, doing this thing, and everything is working as expected. Awesome. So now I'm going to copy the function URL, because I'm probably going to need it later in my next demo. And I'm just going to put it here so that I don't forget about it. And then what I'm going to do is, again, something else. Next demo, I'm going to go to my static web app. Here we go. And what I have here is I already have a PR that is on its way. And what I'm going to do is, this is where the function URL goes. And then I'm going to give it a name. Or did I already do that? Hold on. Yeah, I already have a name. So I'm just going to save this. Git status. Oop. Git commit. Live demo. And I'm in a hurry, so let's get this thing going. You can see my pull request is already here. And what's happening is, if I go back to GitHub, let's go from here. What is now going on is it's doing another build for that pull request that I just did. And the cool thing about static web apps is that, unlike traditional web apps where you need to configure a staging slot and then deploy to that staging slot, with static web apps we have a new feature that basically lets you create an environment for every PR that you're running. So in this case, I have a PR with Blazor 6 running as the content for my static web app. If I go over here, I should be able to see my Blazor app that is hopefully fetching data. That thing is not done yet. OK, so let's see where we are. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? Git push. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on here. I'm pushing a new commit to an existing code review. This is triggering a GitHub action, similar to how we do in web apps, where every commit can trigger a GitHub action. But unlike web apps, what this is going to go is going to create an environment, and it's going to push that latest bits into that environment. In this case, this is a Blazor 6 app. And we can see the details of what's going on. And you can see that this is going to build. It's going to take a couple minutes to build. And then it will be deployed and pushed to production. So because I forgot to do the push, I'm running a little bit late on my demo. So I'm going to just fast forward to the next one, and we'll come back and check this one. OK, so the final thing is we saw all of this thing working across web apps, functions, static web apps. But I always have that guy that bugs me on Twitter that says, I need this very specific version of .NET to be running. And because we're a platform as a service, we manage the versions that are there. So every month when there's Patch Tuesday, we go and we update, and we're keeping you always up to date. But I know there's somebody out there that is using a bug as a feature, and they really, really want to stick with one particular version. And my answer to that is go deploy it in a container. In this case, what I want to highlight is I have my container app, which is my demo number 6, configured through Deployment Center. And this is pointing to an ACR instance, Azure Container Registry. So one thing that is new, and we recently added support for, is being able to authenticate against Azure Container Registry using managed identities. Before, you would have to set up admin credentials, which most people don't want to do. But with with access control and the managed identities, what you can do is you can actually go create an identity and assign permissions to only have the very minimum permissions that you need. So in this case, I'm just giving it the ability to pool repositories, sorry, to pool images. So I'm waiting for this to load. In the meantime, I'm going to browse to the app. It's basically the same app, so nothing changes to the app. It's just deployed in a different way. And this finally loaded, so we can see that all of this is configured. And if I go to identity, what I can see is there is a system assigned identity, and that has one and only one permission, which is to do an ACR pool. So this is completely locked down. The app cannot do anything but pool images. Let's go back to the other demo. It's still going, so maybe I have time for questions.
Fantastic. It looks like we finished deployment. Look at that, polling on deployment, waiting for it to go. I am a huge, huge fan of Azure Functions static websites. So much that we can do there with just a couple lines of code instead of having to go and build an entire website. I love seeing the tech there, Byron.
Thank you.
There's a couple of comments, a couple of questions that have been coming in. I want to make sure that folks know that this is a live session. This is a live event. We want to talk and hear your questions. Tweet to us, #.netconf. And we're going to get your questions. We're going to answer them. We're going to talk to folks like Byron about what's going on, how we can help you be successful with Azure, .NET 6, Visual Studio 2022. We've got great content all day and into tomorrow that we want to make sure that you participate in. So we're seeing here a couple questions. I see a question from our friend Jeremy Sinclair. Deployed on a Windows App Service instance with .NET 6, why is the SDK using Win86 by default?
So by default, we target 32 bits, but this is something that you can configure on the platform, so you can actually switch it to 64 bits. So it's really just a matter of how you configure it. When you look at it, I was running it on an instance that has, I believe, only 4 gigabytes of RAM. So switching it to 64 doesn't really benefit me at this point.
Cool. All right.